So you have your why that's defined in your mission, and you have your destination that's set in your vision. You even have your roadmap plotted out with your SMARTIE goals. All of that we did last week. But how do you ensure your team actually behaves in a way that gets you there, even when you aren't in the room? If you've ever felt like your staff understands the tasks but misses the culture, you are likely missing the final piece of the puzzle, the core values. Today, we are going to learn how to translate your high level vision into the non negotiable behaviors that drive impact. Stay tuned. All right, and so we're diving right in, and we've been on this journey together, right? And so we started off talking about neuroscience of the brain, about brain development, and we talked about the reality of the daily fires that we have to put out on a day-to-day basis in early childhood education. Then we discussed how to stop spinning in circles by setting a clear mission, which is your compass, and vision, which is your mountain peak, right? Your pinnacle. And so we even broke down how to reach that peak using SMARTIE goals. Goals that are specific, measurable, ambitious, realistic, time bound. And we added the IE there, the inclusive and equitable. But there is a gap between knowing where you are going and how you act along the journey. That gap is filled by core values. If the vision is where you're going and the mission is what you do to get there, then your core values are: how do we behave during the process? How do we behave on our way to the desired outcome, which is our vision? They are the essential and enduring tenets of your organization, a small set of timeless guiding principles that require no external justification. They define the culture of your organization, your program. They shape daily decisions and establish the standards of conduct against which all actions are assessed. So let's clarify what we mean when we say core values. So these aren't just nice words like, integrity or excellence that's stenciled on a wall or on a poster somewhere in the staff lounge. True values, true core values describe the behaviors you value over all else. They determine how you treat families, how staff treat each other, and how you handle a crisis, what you do when you are in crisis, right? So it's those non negotiable behaviors. For example, a generic value might be communication, right? That's something that's common across all programs. But a core value that drives impact is transparent communication. So you see how the communication was taken to another level. And so what do we mean by transparent communication? It means when we share the hard news, even when it's uncomfortable, right? We don't make it nice and fluffy and all sugar coated, right? But we give the absolute truth. We're transparent about it. So even when it's uncomfortable to give, we give it in a way, of course, that's not alarming, right? But we give the communication so that whoever the recipients are, have a clear picture of what we're dealing with or what we're talking about. So think of companies like Gusto, whose values include don't optimize for the short term, or Etsy, who uses we lead with optimism. In an early childhood education setting, instead of just saying kindness, a core value might be we assume positive intent, or we prioritize connection over compliance. You see how that's different? So now let's talk about how do we develop these core values. You don't just pick them out of a hat, right? You extract them from the work that you've already done. So in our last episode, we did a lot of work and we talked about creating the vision, creating the mission. It was information packed. We also did our SMARTIE goals, right? So all of that information talking about the cascading goals. So you've already put in the hard work. So now we want to use the information that we've already created to extract these core values from. So look at your vision, look at your mission. Ask yourself, how must we behave, right, in order to achieve this vision? So no matter what that vision is, there's a certain way that we must act and behave in order to get the outcome that we desire. So if your vision involves deep community partnership, a core value must revolve around inclusion and shared power. If your mission, and that's that inclusive, right, equitable piece that we talked about with the SMARTIE goals. If your mission involves serving marginalized communities, then your values must explicitly address equity, right? That's that IE, that inclusiveness, equity that we talked about. Next step is that you need to review your SMARTIE goals. And so we know that the goals without inclusion and equity won't produce the better outcomes for marginalized communities, right? Because that's the example that we're going with. So we know that our values have to support our goals. So if we have a goal to reduce staff turnover by 20%, you might need to have a core value that's centered around staff wellness or professional respect or professional development or advancement, right? So you may need to have something that's set up like that, something that can promote that goal of reducing that staff turnover. Step 3 is that you need to involve your team. So just like we discussed with the goal setting, this can't be done, with a top-down mandate, but you need to gather those from the community in the same way that this works. You have to gather your staff together, include your board members, but most importantly, your teachers, right? And you also want to have some of your community partners, your parents, to also be a part of this. And you want to ask them, what does excellence look like in our daily interactions, right? We need to really put some thought into that. In our day-to-day interactions, what does that look like in order to help us get to the goal or to that vision that we have set before us? So when staff participate in defining the values, they build a stronger sense of ownership, right? They feel that they've had some stake in this, right? And so you get a better buy-in because they felt like they were a part of actually developing and putting this together. So they feel like they have contributed, right, on this vision or this mission or this journey to our vision. And so once you have your values, how do you make them stick is the next question, right? So it's not just about developing them and putting them together, having them somewhere nicely, right? But it's about how do we get it to actually work? How do we get it to actualize with our staff? So you have to move them from the page and move them to the payment, right? Move them to being on the ground and actionable, right? That the staff are able to actually do the behaviors, right, that we want them to exhibit. And so we do that by, number one, we hire and fire by them. And so what that means is you use your core values in the interview questions, right? So you use those core values to help hire and fire, right? To determine whether or not a candidate is going to be a good fit for this environment if you're hiring, right? And then also when you're doing your evaluation process, right? Even when you are doing your annual assessments and things of that sort, you want to look and see, does this person or what the person is working on, does it align to our core values, right? So we actually use it in our practice. And so if a candidate has great credentials, but they don't align to our values, right? Or especially one that's of like shared power, if we're still going with that example that we were given, then we know that they aren't a good fit, right? So that's something we can use that to help us to hire and fire. Another thing we could use our core values to do is to operationalize them. It's important that we do that. So we make them actionable, as I was saying. And so if a value is continuous improvement, then your SMARTIE goals should include professional development milestones, right? Not enough to just say, these are my professional development goals, or this is what we're going to do, or even to just set a schedule for the year because we have our staff development that we do or our professional learning that we do throughout the year. It's not enough just to set that and put them in place, but let's put some milestones there. Let's put some checkpoints into that. And then also, where do we get that information from, right? It should be coming from the staff body of knowing what they need and also what they also desire, right? As far as growing in their profession and in their skill set, right? So you develop some milestones in your professional development, right? And so, but that's if one of your goals is continuous improvement, right? You want to see your staff to also continue to improve. And that would also contribute to the reduction in the staff turnover that we were talking about earlier. And so the next or the third step would be we want to look or to apply a litmus test. We talked about this in one of our prior episodes, but we're going to do it, just look at it a little bit differently. So you want to just how we would do it, how we would apply a litmus test to our goals to check for equity, right? To make sure that it aligns with what we've said, or making sure that there's equitable and that inclusive piece. We have to also apply one to our values, right? So we're doing a litmus test also with our values. So we want to ask, does this value apply to everyone? From the director to the part-time aide, or to the floater, or to the custodian, right? Your maintenance person, or your food handler, your cook, right? Does this align to them as well? Does it apply? Does this value apply to them? Does it help us to make different decisions when resources are tight, right? Does it cause us to compromise what our values are because we're in a tight spot or because we're in a challenging situation? So we want to make sure that we take the litmus test when it comes to our values as well, because earlier I said those core values are your non-negotiables, right? So that means that you do them no matter what. That's that integral piece. You do those no matter what. And also you want your staff not just to do it when you're there, but when you're not there, when you're not in the room, right? They should be able to still hold true to those values that they have. So you want to look at those things to make sure that it does incorporate all, and that they do it as non-negotiable, that they do it at all times. And so we have to put some practices and some action steps in place. And we have to put some work also into helping staff to really understand, not just learn, not just teach them what the core values are, but to help them see how to actionalize it. You may want to do some scenarios around it, right? And have them to kind of act out what that would look like. Do some role play. One thing I found out in my career of all these years is that the training piece of it, we've gone way past where you could do lecture style and expect people to absorb it, right? Some people learn that way, but they learn, our staff, I was going to say children, all of the staff learn in multiple and different ways, right? And so we sometimes don't apply that also to our staff. Yes, we all learn in different ways as well. And so we want to make sure that we have different opportunities or different ways of teaching to make sure that they grasp the concepts, right? And also know how to put it into the daily practice. And then we follow up, right? We do observations and we coach them. We even do some mentoring, right? And we also do some role play and actually role playing it for them, maybe in the moment if there's a situation that's happening, right? But that's how we get them to really grasp those core values, because we need it to become a part of the thread that keeps them together, that just makes the culture, right? It really impacts or creates that culture. So we want to make sure that all of our staff understand it, right? And then we also make those decisions on those that are new coming to the team. Do they align with these goals? It's if you already have staff and you're now trying to do this and implement this, it can be a little bit more challenging, right? So does that mean that you get rid of everyone? As my husband says, throw the baby out with the bathwater? No, you don't do that. But what you now have to do is you have to coach them to the place, right? So that they are able to take on these core values, so that now they are moving along the journey with everyone else on the way to the vision, right? And so that is so important. And the hard truth is that everyone won't make it, right? And so those are hard decisions that you have to make. Everyone is not going to align, especially if your vision is now going in a different direction than what everyone was used to or accustomed to. If it makes them a little uncomfortable, then it's some people will be able to pivot, some will not, right? Some people are just kind of really rigid, unable to learn or move or shift. And so those are hard decisions that you also will have to make. And it's not something, I'm not saying that you terminate someone because they don't align with your values. But as you implement things and as you implement the different processes that will align to all of the action steps that are needed along for your vision towards your mission, as all of that is put in place, their performance won't be able to match it, right? And so then it becomes something that you have to really coach and really support, and do plans around, right? And so, but then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then that's a hard decision that you have to make at the end of the day. But look at what outweighs, right? And a lot of times our hearts are in it and we don't want anyone to fall by the wayside, but we have to think about the end goal, right? The vision is, that's our pinnacle, is that mountain peak that we're reaching for. And so that is the ultimate goal, right? And it's not just so that we can do it. I mean, our vision is what we would like to see for our community, what we want to become in our community, what we want to help them achieve, all of us together achieve at the end of our 5 years or however long we assign or we give ourselves to accomplish that vision. So just kind of putting it all together, your core values are the heartbeat of your program. They are what you allow to navigate all the daily fires of ECE without losing your soul, without getting burnt out. When you align your mission, right? Your mission, which is the why, and your vision is the where we're going, and your SMARTIE goals, which is the what we do, right? In order to get where we're going, and your core values, which are now the how. How do we do it? How do we conduct ourselves? You create a system that is sustainable, equitable, and primed for excellence. Excellence becomes attainable because you have a structure in place for that, right? It doesn't just happen accidentally. It doesn't happen just because we want it, right? We have to be very intentional about it and put structures and systems in place to make it attainable. So if you are ready to draft your values that actually mean something, that actually have impact, I have something that I want to share with you, right? And so I want you to think of this. I also talk about, and you'll see here a lot on this channel, is that we'll leverage some AI supports to be able to support us in helping to get things done, right? And so not that we're working harder, but we're working smarter, right? And so I know that is, everyone doesn't understand, but there are wonderful tools that are out there that could help us to just help make the work a little bit easier. And so I say that because I want to kind of talk about reverse engineering the culture, right? So what I mean by that is we're going to use a little process, which is going to be just a tad bit different, right? But it's going to help us because I understand that it's hard to just pull the values out of thin air, right? So we may look at our vision and we may look at our mission and say, okay, what? Like, where do I pull these values from? So because you've already done the hard work, right? We've done the vision, we've done the mission. that we already have the work that really defines what we're going to do, right? Vision, the future, the SMARTIE goals, the equitable roadmap map of how to get there. We could use AI to help identify the behaviors that strictly are necessary to achieve those specific outcomes. So, uh we I guess we can call this a digital litmus test, if we can. But I want us to just kind of, start with a blank page, but let the technology do the heavy lifting. And so I've created a prompt, and I'm going to show you this prompt. You can use it either in Chat GPT, you can use it in Claude, you can use it in Google Gemini if you'd like. But all of those tools, and you would drop this prompt into the chat, into the search engine there, okay? And so I'm going to just a quick overview of what it's going to be, and then I'm going to dive in and just share my screen and show it to you. But you will feed your vision, your mission, and then at least three of your SMARTIE goals, right? And so you'll put all of that information, right? Because that's information about you, and then you'll give it a prompt of what you need it to do with that information, right? So it will tell you, if you want to achieve X, your staff needs to behave like Y, right? And so that's the result that we're going to get from this. And so it acts as a mirror, showing you the culture required to reach the destination you just mapped out with your vision and your mission and your SMARTIE goals. Okay, so let me share my screen here. Okay, so just taking you in here very quickly. So you would go to chatgpt.ai. And so there is the box there with, it's the chat box. And so what I did was I cut and pasted in the prompt that I shared, or that I do have the link. It's actually a link in the description box to this prompt, right? And it also gives a little bit of reasoning as to or why this works. So it gives you a little bit more information. But I cut and pasted it into this. And so what it says is, act as an expert early childhood education consultant and organizational psychologist. I am going to provide you with my program's mission, vision, and three strategic SMARTIE goals. For the sake of this, I'm just going to change it to two because I only included two, but two of my strategic SMARTIE goals. Based only on these inputs, please generate a list of 5 draft core values. The constraints for the core values, they must describe behaviors, not just abstract nouns. For example, instead of kindness, use we assume positive intent. Number 2, they must explicitly support the equity and inclusion components of my SMARTIE goals. Number 3, they must be actionable and memorable. All right, so here it says, here is my data. The mission, create staff development opportunities to build staff skill set to promote advancement and confidence. The vision, have a stable staff group that provides best practices and promotes better outcomes in the lives of children and families. And then the SMARTIE goals, the two that I have here, is create a staff survey to be done quarterly. And you can go into detail. Of course, yours would be in a lot more detail than this. These are not my actual goals, but just for the sake of this just really small illustration. And then the next one is reduce staff turnover by 20% by next quarter, right? And so here is the information. And so then all we want to do here is just hit go, and let's see what it gives us. We asked for 5 draft core values. So now see, in just a matter of seconds, it spit out based on the information that I put in, right? So of course you will put in your exact vision, your exact mission, and you would put in at least 3 of your SMARTIE goals, right? But look how quickly it provided this draft of core values. And so it's behavior based and equity centered, right? That's what we asked about. And so it says, we listen, then we act. We grow people on purpose, right? So with the first one is, we listen, then we act. We regularly seek staff voice through surveys and conversations, respond transparently to feedback, and use what we hear to improve working conditions for all staff, especially those whose voices are often overlooked. Number two, we grow people on purpose. We intentionally provide equitable access to professional learning, coaching, and leadership opportunities so every staff member can build skills, confidence, and pathways for advancement. Number three, we create safety to stay. We foster a workplace where staff feel respected, supported, and psychologically safe to ask questions, make mistakes, and be their authentic selves, because people remain where they feel valued. Number four, we lead with fairness and consistency. We apply expectations, feedback, and recognition consistently across roles and identities, ensuring policies and practices promote inclusion, trust, and stability. And number five, we invest in relationships, not just roles. We build strong, inclusive relationships among staff, families, and children, recognizing that stable teams and positive outcomes grow from connection, belonging, and mutual respect. So this is pretty good for the minimal amount of information that I put in, right? So it really did expand and extract from what I gave it, and it came up with these five core values, the draft of them, right? And so those are pretty good, but at least they would give you a starting point, right? And in many cases, the more information you give it, right, the more it will give you. And then also, you go over them and you look at them, and you can also respond to chat and say, okay, I like number one, number two. Number three, I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more or rephrase it, or it doesn't really align to our values, or I don't see where it aligns. Provide five more, right? And so you can do that. And you can also challenge it, right? I don't like these goals. I need you to do more. I don't feel that these even align. I need you to do better. You can tell the tool to do better, right? So you do that, and it will extract from that information. So instead of you sitting with your vision statement, and all of your SMARTIE goals, and trying to go through and compare, right, which would take you most likely hours to do, this did it in a few seconds, right? And just pump this out for you. And you can go back and forth with it to get it to what you really need it to be. But it does also will give you like a little explanation here. It'll say why these work for your goals. And so they directly support your staff survey goal. They align with reducing turnover. They embed equity and inclusion. And they are memorable, staff friendly, and actionable. Because remember, in our instructions, we said that that's what we needed it to be. And so it will do that. It will help to condense the time. So instead of having hours and hours of time, and when, as a director or an owner, or a home care provider, when do you have hours upon hours just to sit and to compile and put all of this together, right? And so unless you have a team that's brainstorming, maybe only a couple of hours, but otherwise it can take you a lot of hours. So then what happens? We ends up giving up our weekends, right? Or we have to choose, we take vacation and use that time to have that quiet time where we could really focus on this and get this done, none of which are healthy for you, right? You need your time off. You need to be able to recalibrate and get replenished and all of those things. So it's not good to sacrifice every moment of your time, right? We have family, we have outside lives, all of that, right? So it's not okay to do that, but sometimes that's what we have to do, right? Because we have to keep the ship going. And so I certainly understand that, but this is a tool. So the link to the prompt is in the description. please do go and use it and switch it up. I just gave you an example, but you can tweak it to be exactly what you want it to be. Put in your vision, put in your mission, right? Put in your SMARTIE goals so that it is specific to the needs of your program, but it will help you to develop these core values, not in minutes, in seconds, right? It may take minutes if you go back and forth with it because you don't like the output of it, but definitely challenge it, right? Say, I want these to be a little bit better. These are pretty good. You're moving in the direction, but I need them to be better, or I need them to have more. I want you to elaborate on the description, right? So that they become actionable. So you can, whatever you need it to do, this can be your thought partner in this, right? And instead of hours and hours, or you giving up your Saturday, or giving up your Sunday, or maybe Saturday and Sunday, or your vacation days, you can do this. And so I hope that this is helpful to you. I do hope that you see the use in it, because it is very, very, very helpful. And so, as I said, you can put it in Chat GPT, you can put it in Claude, you can put it in Google Gemini. Any of those will work for you. Okay, so once you put in that chat, make sure you cut and paste what I've provided, and then you go from there, right? And so once you put in your information, it will do that. And so it is very very good with ensuring alignment, right? Research emphasizes that values must explain how the organization will conduct its activities to achieve the vision, right? So it will help to align it, right? And so, but more importantly, understanding that the importance of the core values, because we know where we're going, we know what the end goal is, and we know what we're going to do, the action steps, right? But now we know, or this at least will help us to develop the how we behave on the way, so that we are able to hit or to accomplish all those action steps, that we're able to hit all of our benchmarks, right? And all of our goals, our checkpoints, and to reach our pinnacle, to reach that mountain peak. And so it will help you, if you use AI, it will help you to extract those. It'll just make it so much easier for you, right? And so alignment is mathematically more probable than brainstorming in a vacuum, right? So instead of being by yourself trying to figure it out, as I mentioned, and going through, taking all that time, this can help you, right? And so it checks for the way and the will, as we discussed, right? With the whole neuroscience and behavioral change, we talked about achieving goals that require both the skill, because the skill is the way and the motivation is the will, right? So it'll help to identify both of those. And so the way I structured the prompt is so that it forces the AI to identify the behavioral traits, right? Which will be the way that's needed to achieve those ambitions, which is our will, that we set out for in our SMARTIE goals. And so, the example we gave earlier was about including those marginalized voices, right? And we must do that if we're doing SMARTIE goals, because that's that inclusive, equitable piece, right? And so the AI will also suggest the values that reinforce sharing the power and shrinking disparities, rather than just having generic corporate buzzwords or just random words that don't align to what you're really out to accomplish. So you will find that link below. And I'm so glad that you have spent this time with us. Don't let your culture happen by accident. If you do not plan for it, if you do not guide it, if you do not put structures or a system in place to inform it, to guide it, to help give meat to it, then it will design itself, right? And so then what you will end up having is you'll end up having poor morale. You'll end up having a culture that is toxic, right? And we don't want that. There's so much work we have to get done. We don't want to have to also fight with a toxic environment, right? That will also increase the staff turnover. You have staff that feel unsafe, unappreciated. They won't want to be there. And then if they're in that state, or they're burnt out, if they're in that state, then guess what? They can't perform, right? And so we can't reach that mountain peak of what we want to do for the community if our in-house is a mess, right? If it's chaotic, if the culture is a poor one, right? So this will help us. We have to understand, we have to be intentional about setting the culture. And if, we've not always known to do that. And so now that we know, sometimes we find ourselves in a space where the culture is not what it needs to be. Now we have to go back and try to fix it, right? And we can fix it by putting some of these practices that we've talked about in place, but it will require work in order for us to be able to continue to elevate that standard of care. And so if you are feeling like, I don't know where to start, I'm already in this situation, I'm already here, I am here for you. I will have the link in the description box below, and that you can also reach out and let me know if you need some additional assistance. I do have a diagnostic. I do have a whole system that really works on like staff retention, getting in good talent, right? So those that align to a vision and mission, right? Our goals, right? Our values. So I do have a system there. I do have a diagnostic tool. And so I can really support you in that way. Also, some trainings, so much that we do here. But I want you to know that you're not in this alone. I don't want you to think that if you're already in that place where it's not a good environment, that there are ways to fix it. And we are here to help you in that journey. And so thank you so much for being here. So we'll see you again next time. Until we are together again, go and be great.